Let's jump right in. Welcome to this explainer on the highly anticipated 2026 American College of Cardiology consensus. We're breaking down exactly how to use DOACs for primary and secondary VTE prevention. The landscape of anticoagulation is shifting fast, and these new guidelines give us the exact coordinates we need to navigate some pretty complex clinical scenarios.
So, how do you perfectly balance thrombotic risk with bleeding risk in clinical practice? It's the defining question, right? Every time you prescribe anticoagulation, you're walking a tightrope. Lean too far one way, your patient suffers a life-threatening clot. Lean too far the other, and you're dealing with catastrophic bleeding. Well, today, we're mapping out the precise evidence-based answers from the 2026 guidelines so you can walk that tightrope with total confidence.
We're going to follow the actual clinical pathway today. Our agenda is 1. The DOAC revolution, 2. Primary VTE prevention, 3. Initial VTE treatment dosing, 4. Extended secondary prevention, and finally, 5. Cancer-associated VTE. All right, Section 1, the DOAC revolution.
For decades, vitamin K antagonists, like warfarin, were the absolute standard of care. But today, DOACs have completely transformed how we prevent and treat thromboembolic disease. Why is that? Well, they offer incredibly predictable pharmacokinetics, way fewer drug interactions, and a vastly improved safety profile. For most patients dealing with VTE today, DOACs aren't just a backup option, they are absolutely the preferred choice.
And the mechanism behind this is brilliant. Instead of broadly suppressing multiple vitamin K-dependent factors the way VKAs do, DOACs are basically surgical. They directly target either factor XA or thrombin to halt thrombosis. This pinpoint precision means we can stop a clot from forming while really minimizing the collateral damage of bleeding compared to those older therapies. Moving to Section 2, Primary VTE Prevention, Prophylaxis in High-Risk Patients.
Think of the ACC consensus as your ultimate clinical roadmap. Take a patient undergoing a total hip or knee replacement, for example. They're at a much higher thrombotic risk, right? The standard pathway here recommends exactly 1 month of oral anticoagulation for short-term management. It honestly takes the guesswork completely out of the equation. Here's a massive clinical pearl directly from the guidelines. While both DOACs and low molecular weight heparin are considered appropriate for VTE prophylaxis after major joint surgery, DOACs are now officially preferred whenever possible. So it's a very clear directive. We want oral over injectable prophylaxis here to optimize both patient comfort and clinical outcomes.
Next up, Section 3, Initial VTE Treatment, Acute Phase Dosing.
Now, before you write that prescription for an acute clot, we really need to talk about a huge prescribing pitfall. This isn't like standard atrial fibrillation where you just start a maintenance dose. Acute VTE treatment requires distinct, much higher loading doses before you can step down to maintenance. If you skip the loading phase, you're literally just not treating the acute clot aggressively enough. The consensus data here gives us a really stark comparison of our options. The strategies diverge completely based on the drug you choose. With apixaban and rivaroxaban, you can start immediately with high oral loading doses on day 1. But if you're using dabigatran or apixaban, you actually have to do a 5 to 10 day lead-in with parenteral low molecular weight heparin before you can even touch the oral drug. I want to edge a very specific number into your brain. 7. That's the 7 days of 10 milligram twice-daily loading doses you have to use for apixaban before dropping down to the standard 5 milligram twice-daily maintenance. Rivaroxaban, on the other hand, needs a 21-day loading period of 15 milligrams twice daily. Nailing these numbers is just non-negotiable for acute management. So that begs the question, which one do you actually choose? Well, the 2026 data highlights a pretty critical shift. The consensus explicitly states that an apixaban strategy might actually be superior to rivaroxaban as your initial agent of choice. The reason? It simply comes down to lower major bleeding rates. The efficacy is basically the exact same, but apixaban is proving to be the safer bet right out of the gate.
All right, Section 4, Extended Secondary Prevention, Long-Term Management.
Anticoagulation is a journey, right? We move from that aggressive acute treatment in the first few weeks into a 3 to 6 month evaluation window. Then at that 6-month mark, you've got to make a tough call. Do we stop therapy entirely, or do we transition to an indefinite strategy for patients with unprovoked or recurrent VTEs? When you do need to extend therapy beyond 6 months, you usually don't want to keep them on that full maintenance dose forever.
The guidelines actually recommend specific dose reductions to keep the efficacy up while driving down long-term bleeding risks. Your options are apixaban 2.5 milligrams twice daily, apixaban 5 milligrams twice daily, or rivaroxaban 10 milligrams once daily. Note that dabigatran has no tested dose reduction for this phase, and edoxaban hasn't even been rigorously tested for extended treatment at all.
There's a direct quote from the consensus document that I think is absolutely crucial for daily practice. It says, apixaban 2.5 milligrams twice daily has comparable efficacy to apixaban 5 milligrams twice daily and is associated with lower major bleeding. That is a massive takeaway. It literally proves that for long-term prevention, less is often more when you're trying to keep your patient safe from bleeds without sacrificing clot protection.
For unprovoked VTEs, the path flows from the initial 3 to 6 months of oral anticoagulation directly into longer-term management based on bleeding risk. But here's the thing. Indefinite therapy does not mean prescribe it and forget it. The decision to keep them on it hinges entirely on you continuously reevaluating their bleeding risk at every single follow-up visit.
Finally, Section 5, Cancer-Associated VTE, Treating CAT Patients. For the longest time, daily injections of low molecular weight heparin were the gold standard for our cancer patients. Well, not anymore. DOACs have officially overtaken LMWH as the preferred treatment for cancer-associated thrombus. The data shows they're tied to lower VTE recurrence rates while keeping the overall risk of major bleeding about the same. I mean, patients vastly prefer taking a pill over daily injections, and now the evidence fully backs that up. You do have to navigate a few caveats carefully, though. While apixaban boasts the strongest overall evidence base for cancer patients, rivaroxaban and edoxaban come with a major warning label here. They should be explicitly avoided in patients with urologic, gastrointestinal, and gynecological cancers because of an unacceptably high risk of mucosal bleeding. Just like our earlier magic number 7 for loading doses, we've got a magic number for cancer patients, and it's 6. 6 months is the absolute minimum duration for initial CAT treatment. Once you hit that 6-month mark, long-term and sometimes even indefinite anticoagulation should be strongly considered, as long as your patient still has active cancer or is receiving active anti-cancer therapy.
So we've covered the loading phases, the transition to extended secondary prevention, and the really specific nuances of cancer-associated thrombosis. As you head into your next shift, I want to leave you with a thought. Based on the clear pathways laid out in the 2026 ACC consensus, how are you going to adjust your DOAC prescribing habits to perfectly match the unique bleeding and thrombotic risks of your next patient? I highly encourage you to use this roadmap to rethink your approach so every single dose is tailored to the individual sitting right in front of you. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.